Welcome to Beyond the Game, More Stories, the podcast where we explore the lessons sports teach us about life, leadership, adversity, and growth long after the final whistle. I'm your host, Dwayne Lightfoot Jr., and on this show, we sit down with athletes, coaches, parents, and leaders just to have real conversations about the moments that shape us, the different challenges, the victories, the big ones, the small ones, the setbacks, and the experiences that stay with us long after the scoreboard goes dark. All right, so let's jump into today's episode of Beyond the Game, More Stories. Today's guest is someone whose life has been shaped by the discipline, resilience, and lifelong lessons that come from the game of tennis. She is currently the head women's tennis coach at Middle Tennessee State University, where she's been leading the Blue Raiders program since 2018. During her time at Middle Tennessee, she's guided the program to multiple winning seasons and helped the team reach the Conference USA Tournament semifinals, while also mentoring several all-conference and academic award-winning student athletes. But her story with the game began long before she stepped into the head coaching role. As a player at Butler University, she built one of the most accomplished careers in the program's history. She was a three-time first-team all-conference selection and finished her career with 74 singles wins and helped lead the Bulldogs to 3 Horizon League championship matches. After graduating from Butler with a degree in biology, she immediately began giving back to the program where she served as an assistant coach, helping guide the Bulldogs to back-to-back Horizon League championship matches. Later gained some additional experience in the professional tennis development area, then began coaching upon her return to Butler as the program's head coach in 2012. She spent 6 seasons there leading the Bulldogs and guided them through their transition into the Big East Conference, consistently earning NCAA academic public recognitions awards for things like ranking among the top 10% nationally for academic progress rate. So now she's at Middle Tennessee State University, and she continues to build a program focused on excellence, both on the court and in the classroom, while she's helping develop the next generation of student athletes for us. So from former standout player to program builder to mentor and leader, her journey shows exactly, how powerful these lessons that she's learned from sports can be as she's passing them on to others. So if you please help me welcome Coach Teo Bailey-Duvall to Beyond the Game, More Stories. Good morning, Coach. How are you doing today?
Hey, Dwayne, thank you very much. Awesome introduction. I like to hear my bio read out loud sometimes.
Well, hey, you deserve it. Again, you've put in the work, the time and the effort, and you got the skill both on the court as well as on the sidelines. I appreciate everything you're doing and just kind of helping develop the future of the game of tennis.
Yep, that is awesome. Thank you. It's not a lot of us in this field when it comes to women and African American women. So I think, just to look back and remember what I've done and what I've accomplished, it's always is great and also can be very motivating as we move forward.
Yeah, and that was something that I thought about because as we crossed paths almost 25 years ago on campus, and a lot of people that look like us, we were playing the basketballs and the footballs, but to see somebody like you come in and not only just be on the tennis team, but be one of, if not the star of the entire tennis program, not just the women's side of it. Again, and a lot of people don't even really understand this. My dad was a tennis player. So I knew of just the specialness and just the rarity of seeing somebody like us on the tennis court. So
Yeah. I you're like one vivid memory of my college tennis career of sitting back there on the table watching me play and getting hit with my tennis balls and yelling at me.
yeah,
You
and I
know,
felt like you did
and
that on purpose.
hey, you got to pay attention when you were back there. But to just see the support from other athletes or other sports, it was kind of big, and tennis isn't always the most popular sport on campus. But to see, our basketball team was doing really well at Butler, and you were a member there, but to just see you come down and just show that love and show that support, that was really a big deal. And I like to remember that as I encourage my players on the team now to just branch out and be friends with everyone, because just seeing other athletes in the crowd is always a great feeling.
Yeah, and that's something that, like you said, basketball is gonna have that, but that was something that I intentionally made an effort to do. Not just because you and I we ran in the same circles, we had a lot of the same friends, but even I went to soccer games, I went to volleyball matches, I went to track meets. I tried to be involved. There were
Hmm.
clubs on campus. I would try to go and be involved in. Just because here we are, we're on this campus living this life, and this is an opportunity to meet people from all over the world. And it gives you that opportunity to learn from them. And like you said, that support of being there and seeing somebody who understands what you're going through, the traveling, the late nights, the early morning workouts, it lets you know I'm not alone in this. At a small school like Butler, we're 4,000 students total. Yeah, it just I think it meant a lot for me to be able to do that, and I would try to encourage some of my teammates to come out as well. I know that we would go. A lot of my teammates would go to a lot of other meets and matches and stuff as well. So you're building that family environment out there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
But I do probably still have some of the whelps and wounds from them tennis balls that you fired at me. So
I doubt it. I doubt it, but it's a lasting memory. So there you go. You never forgot
absolutely.
me. You got me on this call now.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing it. So again, like I said, I can't express how much gratitude and thankfulness I have for you for doing this. Because I know, like I said, you got a real busy schedule. I think you said you got a match tomorrow. You said you're heading out of town. So we'll hop into everything and kind of the way I do it here. But before we jump into all the different accomplishments and everything that you've done, and everything that people may see just on the surface or see from the stands, or if they Google you or anything, or like you said, read your bio. On this podcast, I like to focus on the person, not just the player, not just the athlete, not just the coach. So I want to try to set the table for everybody. So if somebody only knows you from those things, those highlights, what is something that those people don't know about what helped you get to where you're at today?
Well, I mean, I think you might have to ask, but I'm one of four kids in a single parent home for most of my growing up, and the chance happening that I got into tennis was just super random, and had no idea in the summer of '95 that it would definitely change my life and change the direction of my life. So if someone only looked at my bio and read that, they wouldn't know growing up in the inner city of Chicago, um, the challenges that I had and that almost most of the minorities who were playing tennis in Chicago had. But there was a great deal of commitment with my academy and the coaches that stayed on us and make sure that we were successful both in the classroom and on the tennis court. So yeah, I would say uh, my mom, did her best and worked hard at making sure, you know, I guess I was there where I needed to be. And when the time came and I turned 12 years old, I needed to be on a tennis court. And that's how the journey of my life started as a tennis player.
Yeah, and again, that is a great testimony to hear, because that's one thing that I always think back to is it's not always the easiest thing, especially in that inner city of Chicago area, with resources and finding a tennis court or finding there's basketball courts and stuff everywhere. So that's part of the story that you have. So as we talk about it again. you were able to use your work ethic and your God-given ability, as well as the skills that you trained and honed and built on to advance your career through high school and make it into the college level. But now, like I say, you're a head coach. But kind of tell me a little bit more about that. You said the summer of '95. Who was the first person that put the racket in your hand?
So the story goes, my mom, I believe it was Wimbledon was playing, and Wimbledon is usually in July. And my mother, I think she saw a tennis player on TV. I say Shonda Rubin, but it probably wasn't Shonda. But I guess I looked like the player. She was a black lady. She had a ponytail. She's playing tennis. And my mom looked up and said, Teo, that looks like you. I said, oh, really? Well, buy me a racket. So that Christmas, I got my first tennis racket. And that summer, so that had to be the summer of 95, so Christmas of 94, I went down to Jesse Owens Park, which is on the south side of Chicago. And they had tennis courts, and I was hitting off the wall. And then I joined National Junior Tennis League, which is NJTL. And I joined that summer, NJTL. And then at the end of NJTL season, there was an academy out of Jesse Owens Park, and I just happened to be there late enough to see these kids come on the court. And I was pretty cocky. I was already playing basketball with my brother in the alley. I was playing football, baseball. We played everything. So I know I'm athletic and I'm good at what I do. But I saw these players, these kids that look like me on the court, and I saw the boss or the coach, and I said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And I was like, I can beat those kids. I couldn't beat those kids, I know, but I'm a cocky person. So the head coach, he looks at me and he says, "Well, you know, go get your mom then if you're serious." I don't think he thought I was going to go get my mom, but I ran up. I lived about 8 blocks from the park. I ran up. I got my mom. I brought my mom back down, and his name was Lamont Bryant. And I told my mom, "Hey, Mr. Bryant told me to come get you if I'm serious about playing tennis," and that was the start. And I became a part of Love to Serve Tennis Academy, which is right now Love to Serve Tennis and Academic. Ever since, I'm on a board of that organization now. And Mr. Bryant, throughout those years of me being affiliated, he became my father figure since my dad wasn't around. He walked me down the aisle in my wedding, actually. So a great guy who's really shaped who I am, and helped guide me and lead me on this journey. But that is the starting point of my life, of my tennis career. It's really random, that all of a sudden my mom sees the person and says, "Hey, that looks like you. Hey, well, give me a racket." And I think I still have that Prince racket in the bag somewhere around.
That is an awesome story because again, it's just being in the right place at the right time. Your
Yes.
mom was in front of the TV to see it. When you, like you said, how you are, well, go get me a racket then. And then
Yeah.
immediately, not like not pushing back and was like, no, I could never do that, or I don't want to do that. You immediately took that challenge on, and I think you get down there and you're just hitting the ball off the wall, and you're able to sit there and you walk over there, the confidence to walk over there and be like, you know what, I can beat you, I can beat you, I can beat you, and coach, you what who you want me to play first, and I think that is an awesome story to hear, man. And I'm glad that you were able to do that because again, you have a gift that you've been able to share with the world. And I think it all spun from that moment of just again happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So here you are. You're going through high school, and you said you're playing at your club level and everything. And I know this is something that I went through with basketball, but tell me a little bit because I feel like it's probably a different experience. Tell me a little bit about your recruiting process and how that went. That got you to Butler.
That may be more chance as well. I didn't really start looking at colleges maybe until the end of junior year. I don't know why, but it really wasn't in the forefront. I was doing my thing in high school. I was one of the top players in the city of Chicago. I was making it to state, probably going as far as probably the first city girl to go as far as Katrina Adams in a decent number of years, and then there were some after me. But uh, apparently, some coaches started reaching out to my coach, I didn't know. So I didn't know UIC, University of Illinois Chicago. Shannon reached out to my coach and was interested in me. And I think she maybe saw me at the state tournament, which makes sense because Chicago is really strong in tennis. It may be a location that's not great when it comes to weather, but we have really strong tennis there, and there's a lot of indoor courts. Uh, so then there's a Midwest closed tournament in Indianapolis, and I went there. I believe it was the summer of June after junior year, and Jason Susha, my college coach at Butler, he saw me there. Now, see, my game style is all court serving volleyer, one hand backhand, and so he saw me play, and this is actually similar to his game plan, his game style, and so he just saw me and was like, "Yo, I like what I see." So he talked to my coach there. I went on an official visit. It was interesting official visit, but it was good enough, and I committed, and then that got me to Butler. Now I visited Southern University. I reached out to some other schools like Howard University because a lot of my friends in my academy were going to the HBCUs and playing tennis there, and it was easy to get full rides there. But I only if I wanted to go to a HBCU, I think I was only focusing on Howard. But then that coach didn't want to bring me on an official visit. I thought my accolades was good enough that he would think, I could have been a good catch, but he didn't want it. Southern gave me an offer. I think Xavier University down there gave me an offer, but it wasn't a full ride. But then Butler was there, full ride, and I think the coach really sold me because he was committed to developing me and making me better. When I talked to like some other coaches, I didn't feel like that was going to be the case, and so that's how my college journey started.
Yeah. So mine was a little different. Like Dave Butler found me through looking for other people, right? I just happened
Mm.
to be I guess the Cinderella at the ball. And my wicked stepsisters had gone, and that's who everybody was there to look at. And they just happened to find me. But tell me a little bit about as you're going through this process. I know it has to be frustrating that like you said, with the situation with Howard, they didn't bring you in. How were you able
Mhm.
to, what were you able to look back on and maintain that drive and passion? Be like, okay, well, if they don't want me, I'm gonna make them regret not wanting me, and I'm gonna still continue to push because I know what I want and what I deserve. What helped you get through those moments?
I think maybe just knowing what was supposed to happen was going to happen, and I guess it wasn't meant for me to be there at Howard and playing for them. Um, and I knew, I guess once I heard that Butler was interested, I knew that there was still a lot of interest, and uh, I think I had a lot to offer. So I think that's just other schools. Like I reached out to Auburn University. I reached out to University of Arizona. And I mean, there wasn't any spots open for those positions. I think from my ranking at the time, I don't think I was going to be able to get that spot. So those fell through. So I didn't just stop reaching out to schools. There was still another effort. Back then we were writing letters, snail mail to folks. Now we don't do that. I told my players about that. So, I just said, there's a school that's going to work out. And, it did work out.
And I think that's another interesting part of it. You mentioned about how the process was back then. Like you said, writing letters to coaches, sending actual VHS tapes to people because we
Hmm.
didn't have DVD. At least I know I didn't have DVDs.
No,
They were
I
probably
didn't
coming
either.
in probably shortly after you.
Yeah.
But just and what I think is interesting is, now you're on the other side of that. Right now, you're the coach. You've got the kids trying to reach out to you.
Hmm.
And I think that just brings an interesting aspect to it. Because you're one of the people that get to see both sides of it, so you understand what a kid is going through. That's trying to get your attention and everything, and you're able to offer advice and help. Whereas you said the coach at Howard might have just been like, no, we're not interested right now, but you've learned from that and now you're able to give more color commentary to that kid who may send you something that you just don't feel is the right fit because you've been
Hmm.
through that and you're not just going to want to leave that kid in that situation. So
Yeah.
that is very good to hear. So now again, you end up at Butler. thankfully, because I know that that program was happy to have you there. You spent 4 years there, and if I remember correctly, y'all, you guys went to three conference championships, right?
Yes.
So, and that's one of the things that a lot of people look at. It's hard. Everybody starts the season and we're like, all right, our goal is to win, the conference championship. You guys get there, and then you don't get the desired outcome that you want. What are some of the lessons that you especially as you grew into that senior leader, that junior leader, that you were what were some of the lessons that you were able to take from those other experiences going into the new season to help keep the team focused on the goal and pick up spirits even after those some of those matches?
I'm gonna be honest. My influence on the team may have been only through performance.
Okay.
You know, I didn't build the close bonds and relationships with my teammates that I kind of really push with my girls right now on the court and as a team. And I think it just wasn't in the forefront of Jason's mind. I think a lot of it was development and performance. So the team bonding aspect, I don't think my words or anything was impactful enough rather than my effort on the court. And every day, no matter what it was, practice, matches, I gave my best. And I think they knew they can kind of count on me to either win or do pretty good. And so I would say what I took from those close championship matches and losses to an extent. I may have won all of my matches there, but the team as a general, we didn't win. We had a lot of close ones. Unfortunately, I think I just always took it and was just driven the next year. I trained all summer. One summer I did boxing. I have a cousin who's teaching down in Chicago at a boxing club, and I would go down there and I would train and I would just do some sparring and do some boxing or not really sparring but bags and stuff like that. So I was always trying to find different ways to stay in shape and be stronger and be a better athlete. I don't know what all my teammates were doing. We were not as close. I spent a lot of time with non athletes or non tennis players, like with the Black Student Union. Those folks, I didn't spend a lot of time with my teammates.
Mhm.
So I think my experience is just a little bit different. And maybe it was, I would say this, there wasn't a lot of black women tennis players on the team before I got there. And when I looked through the history, it looked like there was one before me who wasn't scholarship. And I think there was a decent amount of culture shock in interacting with me and understanding. And I think that really affected my efforts at, really bonding with the team and trying to be that leader there in that sense. And also maybe their efforts in turn as well. So it's just a little different. It's just the sport just isn't very diverse.
Yeah. No, I understand, and it's I saw that, and I appreciated the fact that you can admit that, and you look at it, and there are different kinds of ways that people lead, right? Some people are that vocal leader, but some people go out there and they lead with their performance, and that is a situation where those followers may not be the right word, but those teammates, that gives them something to chase. Well, she's working this hard. I need to work just as hard as her, especially, in tennis where you guys you're playing for your rankings and everything. If I want to be ranked, above her, I want to take her spot. I got to put in more work than her, and you may not be saying it, but the more that you push yourself, the better you get, the more that you end up, I think is sparring the word that y'all use in tennis when you go back and forth with each other.
Just practicing.
Just practicing, and y'all end up
Yeah.
like scrimmaging each other.
Yeah.
The more that I'm continuing to lose to you, the more that the better that's going to make me, because if I'm playing against somebody better than me, it's going to help me get better ultimately.
True. I agree, and that's kind of a motto I have with my players as well. The more you push on the court and you push each other, you can't sandbag or take it easy on each other or be nice because they're your friends. You just beat your friends and make them better. And sometimes I have to remind them, beat her butt. Don't take it
Yeah,
easy because then they're like, oh, she's my friend. No, if she's your real friend and your teammate, you want her to get better. You're gonna kick her butt here. So yeah, I tried to kick everybody's butt on the team. There was no
Yeah,
mercy.
and I try to deliver that message as well. You're not helping your teammate, or even as at a youth level, you're not helping your friend out if you just play down to their level and not do what you can do. If
Hmm.
I want you to get better, playing against me, if I'm the better one, is going to help you get better. It doesn't help you get better or help me get better if I just let you, just return my serve. If I don't give you my full serve, or if I don't rush
Hmm.
the net when I know I could make it there for a drop shot. You know.
Right.
So no,
Right.
I
Yeah,
definitely
definitely.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yes.
So and and you mentioned this, right? We were in the same era, same generation at Butler, and I think we might have had 150, blacks at the entire school. And you
Yes.
mentioned things like the BSU, the Black Student Union, and what a lot of people look at it when they hear you talk about college sports. Yes, you're a student athlete, but it's also what everybody considers as a full-time job. You have individual instructions, weights, practice, travel. You still have class, study hall, all this other stuff. But as you mentioned, you were a part of the BSU. You also did intramurals. You also joined a sorority during your time, at Butler. So as much as we as athletes have to do, you were able to manage your time well. What did kind of going through that, balancing all these, pardon the pun, balls and tennis balls in the air and making sure none of them drop, right? What did that teach you about just overall time management that you had to have at that level?
You missed out the fact that I worked.
Yeah.
I worked every year in college as well. The first year I was volunteering in order to keep a stipend from my coach back at home for the first year semester. But then I started working at Starbucks, and I
Mhm.
worked at Starbucks. Actually, I worked in the cafeteria. Then I worked at Starbucks, and then
You
I
worked at
worked on
Starbucks at night.
campus. Yeah, I closed, and so that's midnight.
Hmm.
So like 8 to midnight, close, and then I would be up studying until 4 a.m. and fall asleep in the student union. I think I had that false sense of security because the lady would wake me up vacuuming every morning. Um, you know, if anything, it told me that I don't need a lot of sleep to get stuff done. And if you just want to experience life and enjoy it, you just may have to make some sacrifices. Now, I will say I wasn't the very best student. And I just love enjoying every aspect of it. So if I could have been on the court and in the weight room, I would have chosen that over class. However, I enjoyed school. I liked being a bio major. I love studying life. I just struggled in some areas, and maybe I could have put a little bit more time in that. But I was balancing a lot of balls. I didn't. My mom didn't have a lot of money, extra money to send me, so I had to make that money myself. If I wanted my cell phone or pager to be on at the time, I had to pay for that. I didn't have a car, so if I wanted to go somewhere, I was taking public transportation. Eventually, I got a car sophomore year, but balancing everything, I think it just told me that if it needs to get done, it can get done. So there's no excuse, right? My players here, they have it pretty good. They don't have to work. They have cost of attendance. They have money going in their pockets for them doing nothing, or just being a student athlete extra that I did not get as a student athlete. And they can focus more on their classes and on their tennis. But then if they come to me with an excuse of why they don't have time, I'm like, well, no, you can make time. Oh, I know you got to sleep. I know your body needs to heal. I get that. But then there are times where there's some sacrifices. If you choose to major in this major and you want this degree, you got to do what it takes to be successful there. And if you may, certain days of the week, you sacrifice a few hours of sleep. That's what you got to do. Those sacrifices are important for your success, both on the court and off. So I think what I mainly learned, you don't need a lot of sleep. 4 hours, and you know what? As a mom now of two kids, I still get the same amount of sleep.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so
Yeah.
I get it. I try not to complain as much, and I tell my girls, I read this quote somewhere, if you're tired, do what you got to do tired. And then when I'm finding myself feeling really tired and not wanting to do things, I just say, hey, I just got to do it tired, and I get up and I do it tired.
Yeah. No, and I think that is amazing. And again, that's I understand. Like I said the parent now we transitioned from these 17, 18-year-old kids walking around campus with, not a lot of real life concerns to adults with kids that have mortgages, electric bills, bills my parents never had, the internet bill,
Hmm.
a lot of things that we're still juggling all those balls right now. And like you said, sometimes you just got to get up and you got to go. You've got younger kids. They don't really understand, well, mommy just worked the whole day and just came back from out of town, but that you still got to turn on and you still got to be mom. They want to get on the floor and play or have you chase them around. You got to do that. And like you said,
Yeah.
being tired is a part of it. You find times to make for everything that needs to be done. And if you can find a way to still, I do it now. I take a 8-minute nap, and it helps me get through, about 6 7 hours of a day just off of that 8 minutes.
Yes.
So,
Love the power
but
naps.
again, oh yeah, they are wonderful. And but you talked about it. You talked about it. You were a biology major, and what a lot of people don't understand about that is just the huge, time commitment that comes with being a science major. And I don't know if you remember the way the horseshoe of buildings was set up at Butler, but
Yes.
I was a business major, right?
Hmm.
One of
Right
the
next
easiest
to
majors out there.
it. Yeah.
But so on if you're looking at the horseshoe, right? We're kind of in
Yeah.
that middle at the turn. The pharmacy, school of pharmacy was to our right, and the science building was right in front of you to the left. A lot of times I would just, but they were all connected. So a lot of times I would just walk down one of those long white hallways and walk out of the smarter building so that I looked smarter, again, as opposed to just walking down the stairs and going out of the business school.
Ah,
So
that's
we had so yeah, no, it but again, great times back there at Butler and everything. And again, we took a lot from it. We've gained a lot from that place. And we're able to kind of put all of that as we're going through now. But one thing that again, like I said, my father played tennis growing up. My dad was actually trained by the same trainer that trained Arthur Ashe, because my dad's from DC.
mm,
So, as you go through this, tennis, for the most part, I know they have doubles, but is seen as, from the outside looking in, is seen as an individual sport. A lot of people
yes.
don't really understand the team dynamic of it. Is, your match gets you so much toward the overall meet and everything. But from, most onlookers, tennis is seen as an individual sports. But as you get into playing for the schools and everything like that, how does that balance of an individual performance, what does that teach you about team responsibility and teamwork?
It really it takes you out of your normal mindset and what your comfort level is, because now you realize that other folks are depending on you. And it's usually like, I have to remind my girls, this isn't just about you. When you're alone or home playing tournaments and you want to crap out in a match because you're not feeling good, you can do that, but you can't do that here on this team. Once you set foot on that court, if you're sick, if you're hurt, but then you're choosing to play, then I expect you to perform, and I'm still expecting you to win. So it's not about you, and I think that sometimes it's hard for kids who did not play on a team setting to come into college and then feel that new pressure of performing, putting in some extra work, being a good person, being a good teammate. Um, that sometimes can take a toll on them. Though if they stay, I think for the 4 years, they are much better people, junior, senior year, than freshman year when it's all about me. And so I think it really takes the team to the other upperclassmen on the team to continue to help those younger or newer players come into the program and understand what we're about, and what the important aspects are, and knowing that it is team before self, right? And I kind of, I like to take the Butler way mantra of putting team before self, and that's part of it. And I always push that with my players to understand that, and become a good people person, understand differences in people, but be accepting of it, and then just be loving. And it's a challenge for them, but my patience with them and consistency, I think, is important to help them get to that next level.
And and that's very true, because you think about it, you're going to be one person on a team, for the rest of your life. not just on the sports court, not just on the field, anything like that. In a, again, a marriage, in a mother son, father son relationship, work. You're gonna have all these things, and that foundation that you build younger is what helps you get through all of those different relationships and teams that you become a part of later.
It's about more than being on a team, though the team is super important. They're kind of getting paid to be here, but for me to help create quality people go out in the world and contribute to society in a positive way, I think that may be probably one of the most important jobs I have, and what I take very seriously as my job. And I hold them accountable for being honest, doing the right thing, especially when no one's looking, and hoping that they take a lot of these lessons that we talk about on court, and that I may say is similar to being off the court, and they take that forward with them when they're gone, and then when they have to look back, they can. And then overall, they're just a better person, because when I see corporate America look for athletes and say, hey, we want former athletes, former college athletes because of this and that, because they're a team player, they have a good work ethic. However, I think if we're not conscious of that as a coach to help prepare them for that, I think it can just kind of go right over their head, and they're not necessarily prepared for the corporate world, even though those corporations may think they are. And I think it's important that as coaches that we take a moment and point out a lot of these areas that they may see at that next level, or at their next journey in life once they leave college, that what we do here is going to be similar to there. So now you're going to be better prepared. You're going to be better prepared for those tough conversations you don't want to have, but you got to have. Um, and doing things that are difficult, or sometimes getting up and just do it when you don't want to. You don't feel like it, but you got to get up and do it. Sometimes you just feel better once you're there. But I know these girls don't want to get up at 6 a.m. for weights all the time, right? But they get up and they do it. And so that's just a rite to passage, I think, with certain programs and being a college athlete. And then we pointed out, hey, you're going to have to do this when you leave and you decide to go and to the working force.
Yeah. And I think that coming from, you and I talked about earlier, coming from somebody who's been there, that gives you that immediate sense of credibility of, hey, like you said, that rite of passage. I did it. So I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't already done.
Right.
There is a bigger picture in here, and I think that is what a lot of people take from it and understanding. And I think that is how we kind of fix some of the problems that we have in youth sports. Like I said, we were talking earlier offline about getting people who have been where these kids want to go, or are where these kids want to go. Those need to be the people that they're listening to. You know, so that's really really good advice. So, and I'd also wondered, like, again, like I said, you've got that immediate credibility. These kids can Google search you and see all your accolades and everything. So, one thing that I was wondering, which you just told me about, was some of the techniques and skills that you find important to make sure that you instill in all of your kids. So, I appreciate you sharing that with me. So let me ask you this. So now we're talking about Coach Teo, the coach. Now, you've been a player at Butler, and you were also a coach at Butler. What was something that you found in those two separate journeys, as far as what helped you build your leadership style? Because I know you said earlier, as a player, you were kind of more hands-on, follow my lead physically, but now as the coach, you can't do that. How were you able to work through that?
A lot of I stay really active, and I think my girls see me stay physically active, whether it's through tennis or CrossFit, and continuing to challenge myself physically. I think that gave me a little bit more credibility to have high expectations from them physically, since I am not out. Like, I would hit with them, right? I would play in and play with them as well, so they can see I kind of know what I'm talking about. I'm kind of practicing what I'm preaching, uh, so that helps. But when it comes outside of the performance part and being a leader, a lot of it is just leaning on, my former coaches and asking them for help and guidance, administrators, talking to them, because the other side of the coin is totally different. From the coaching perspective, being willing to learn about and understand each individual athlete, and then connect with them on this personal level, that's a challenge. And that's something I did not find important as a player. But now in this end, I see how important it is. And I also had a lot of reflection on my relationship with my college coach, with Jason, at where we struggled and why we struggled. And then how can I be better now that I'm the coach? So I try to not put my players in the same situation and have them feel the way I felt when I was when I had troubles, or we just had our little head clashing, freshman year, sophomore year, but we got through it. And to know that I can kind of give that space to my players to have their differences, but also come talk to me, and so we can sort this out. So I think there is a lot of learning from both ends as an athlete, and then as a athlete while I was a coach, but then now, a different perspective, and then now as a mom, that changes everything as well, because then now my patience level changes. I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and to stay calm with them through all these shenanigans, then I got to come here and be calm with these 10 girls with their shenanigans. There's a little bit of overlap there, and I think just kind of every year I've changed, but I think I've changed a lot for the better, from it when it comes from coaching and just being a better overall well-rounded coach for my players as a whole.
Yeah, and it's a learning process as you're going through it. Your kids these days are different than our generation, and you have to learn how to deal with some of these new things that I know you said you lean on some of your coaches. Some of Jason didn't have to deal with kids and social media. So you're kind of learning all of this now as you're going on the fly. And again, I see the product that you guys are putting out. I'm seeing the your records and everything. I know we talked about the meet that you had last week and getting ready for another one. So I know your team's in good hands. I know what you're talking about. And like you, when I work with some of the kids, and as recently as last night, I've got an 8th grader and a 7th grader. They had their AAU basketball training, and I got out there on the court with them, and again, I'm 44. I got out there on the court with them last night, and I feel it this morning. But but again, that hey, I understand what I'm talking about, and there's merit behind what I'm trying to give y'all. So, but since
Yes.
we're talking about practice, again, like I said, I'm also helping out at the high school level as well. And one thing that we're trying to preach to our players is just the overall level of attention to detail, the effort, and like the maturity that has to happen as you progress through this career, right? There's not a lot of hand fighting in line, playing around, talking. We didn't have to deal with this, but kids talking on cell phones during breaks and all that stuff. As a coach, like I say, you've seen it as a player and now you're as a coach. How would you kind of compare and contrast just the different levels of what's needed from a player as far as preparation, intensity, and expectations from those different levels, from the high school level to the college level to the pro levels?
The high school level, a lot of it is in tennis. It depends on what region or what state you're in, and whether or not the high school level is as relevant for Division 1, right? And so there are a lot of states or some areas that the high school isn't very strong. So we won't really look at that per se, but we do look at kids in that age range, and those kids we're looking at are the ones that are playing year round in their academies. They're putting in all this time on the court. Some of them are doing online schooling, not going in. Um, and so we're really looking at a lot of time it's the time on court for their practice, and then how much they're competing throughout the year, so that when they get to college, that workload isn't that much of a difference or drastic shock. Now, in college, we are limited to 20 hours a week. Compared to when you're juniors, you're not limited to that. So these kids are putting in 6 hours, 8 hours a day on the court when they're not going in school. And then when they come to college, and we're only limited to 4 hours a day, right? But then the expectation of a little bit more. So they have to adjust. And I think they really have to make practice more quality practice rather than the quantity that they had. And so we have way more focused drills, focused practice. We have a purpose behind every shot and everything we do. Compared to in juniors, you may just have a good 2 hours of fluff. You just hitting balls and you're just going through the motions. You're not completely engaged, but we don't have that luxury in college because I can't just be out there with them all day. So that really wills them in to be more purposeful and be a little bit more focused while we're on the court. And then when you go to college, I mean, when you go into the pros afterwards, now you're back to being by yourself. You're not in that team setting, but you're taking, I think, that focus level and having the purposeful practice now as an individual. So that should help you kind of get over that hump of wasteful time on the court, more purposeful time, and then hopefully finding that success at the professional level.
Yeah, I think that is a great answer. And again, that's that self accountability that people have to be responsible for. And like you said, a lot of people don't understand about the 20-hour rule. Again, if you're doing 6-7 hours a day as a junior, you're getting 40 hours in a week. But now at college, you got to get that same level of work done in half the time. So that extra playing around time you don't have anymore. So very, very, very insightful. So now, again, as you're going through this, and like you kind of touched on kind of what you're looking for, and like your players as far as their commitment, their work ethic on the time, so that you're easing that transition for them. But as you're going out and you're finding, the next year's players or the year after players to come play for you, what are some of the non-performance qualities you look for in kids these days, and you're going through your evaluation process?
Classroom grades are pretty important. My program, we've always had one of the top GPAs in the department, and I one of the top. We're like one or two. We're usually two or three, and we've been one a few times. So it's the same thing at Butler. We had usually one of the top GPAs. And I always tell my players, if you're not doing well in the class, because student is part of your title, if you're not eligible in class, then you're not going to be eligible on the court. So I need you to take this classroom seriously. If you need help, get help. So that is a big deal with me, what their grades are. Um, uh, Having a good kind of, I guess, aura about you. So just a good person. I don't really like mean people. And, sometimes the recruiting calls can be a little tricky where, you get someone who seems really nice and then they come in and they're not the nicest. So it builds some character from the coaching perspective. But being a good person and having solid moral values, I think it's super important. I don't like liars. I don't like cheaters. I don't want anyone who wants to socialize, more than they want to be focused on the important things. I think there should always be a balance. I need them to have fun. I need them to enjoy and experience college. I do because I cherish my experience. I just don't want them to do it too much, and that's why I tell them go eat and have fun, but don't do it too much. Have a little bit of it. So their moral compass has to be, I think, solid for me when they come to the team, and then doing pretty good in the classroom is also super important.
And I agree. I think that is something that I think Butler instilled in a lot of us is the importance of getting it done in the classroom. I'm somebody who I
Mhm.
tell my kids all the time. My youngest hates school, but I tell him, hey, I went to school every day. I missed literally 4 days of school in 12 years growing up. I said I
Mm,
went to school because without school, I don't get to go play basketball. So it is a means to an end for me. If I don't have
yes.
those good grades, my parents aren't gonna let me play. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
why they say the stats show that girls who are involved in extracurricular or sports in high schools, they stay out of trouble. And they do a little bit better in the classroom because they're in these extracurricular that's keeping them focused and keeping them motivated or in line. So I think having something, whether it's sports or something else, you're doing, is super important. I think to all the kids growing up now, and not just let them just go home and relax and do nothing. Have something in their schedule afterwards or before.
Yeah. And I'm gonna clip that out and send that to my kids so they understand. It's not just me telling you that. There are everybody out there wants you to understand. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. All right. So that was kind of the meat and potatoes, everything I wanted to talk to you about. So now what I'd like to do is just kind of give you some quick hitters. I'll give you a kind of a this or that. You tell me first thing that comes to mind. Just, don't think about it. Just only rule I have is you can't say both. I may ask you a question. You tell me the first answer that comes to mind. All right. We'll go through these quick. All right. How many tennis rackets are in your car right now?
Two.
Two. All right. Forehand or backhand?
Good. Forehand or backhand? Backhand.
All right. Would you rather coach singles or doubles?
Doubles.
Favorite men's tennis player?
Pete Sampras.
Favorite women's tennis player?
Ah, Venus?
All right.
Kind of.
Favorite tournament to watch?
US Open.
Is there a dream tournament you would have wanted to have played in?
US Open.
All right. All right. So now this one is going to be a little complicated. All right. So this is my last one I want to ask you. So there's kind of the original in the very beginning, like the Venus Serena, the blow up that they had, it kind of opened the door to and changed the landscape. And nowadays you have players like Coco Gauff and Sloane Stephens that are kind of inspiring this next generation and kind of, picking up where they left off. Which generation of African American tennis players do you feel has had a bigger impact on the culture? The ones who opened the door are the ones who are kind of keeping it going now.
Well, I mean, if you say open a door, you're probably still looking at Althea Gibson, Zena Garrison, the ones that were before Venus and Serena, because I think those are the ones that inspired those two, right? You know what I mean? Or Richard
Okay.
as they kind of got underway. Um, so I think still Venus and Serena are super impactful, right? They got this new culture, pop culture. They're involved in so much more in the communities and being out there and then gaining, just getting a lot of money, endorsements that was really big for a sport that you didn't see a lot of black folks. So I'm still going to say Venus and Serena probably had the most impactful careers.
Okay. Awesome. So again, I appreciate you doing that. So it's kind of as I'm building this platform, I'm doing this with help from others. So every episode I have a sponsor. So this episode is proudly sponsored by Volleyball Club Hub. Volleyball Club Hub is dedicated to connecting athletes, families, and coaches with the resource they need to grow the game of volleyball. Whether you're looking for programs, development opportunities, tournament guidance on navigating the club volleyball landscape, Volleyball Club Hub serves as a trusted platform designed to bringing volleyball community together. Their mission is simple: help athletes find the right opportunities, help clubs gain visibility that they deserve, and support the continued growth for the sport at every level. From young athletes just getting started to competitive players working toward the next level, Volleyball Club Hub is committed to creating a space where players, coaches, and families can stay informed, connected, and inspired. To learn more and explore opportunities with the volleyball community, visit Volleyball Club Hub today at their website. And we want to thank them for their support on this episode of the podcast. So, all right, Teo, again, as we wrap up the episode, again, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think you've offered a lot of insight to, not just the tennis world, but to the sports world and the parenting world and everything that I think a lot of people are going to get something from. So, again, I thank you for doing this. As I go through this, whenever I have people come on, I like to give them the opportunity to, to let everybody know about any of the projects they're working on or their social media or upcoming matches, schedules, anything like that you got going on. So if there's anything you want to let everybody know, please take your time to do it now.
Well, we are headed to Georgia for matches against Georgia State and Kennesaw State this week, Thursday and Friday matches. And then we're hosting a professional tennis tour event here on campus next week. So all next week, we're going to have men's and women's players on campus playing and winning money. So that's awesome. Some of our players are in the draw. Some of the men's team is in the draw. As we gear up and get ready for our conference tournament, we're going to take over and hopefully we had a crazy year this year so far, but it's not over till it's over. It's never too late to get better. It's not about how you start, it's how you finish. So our goal is to finish strong and make it to that conference final.
Awesome. And, we wish you luck. We'll be watching and cheering and supporting MTSU and you and everything that you're doing. So again, I appreciate taking the time to do this. And just kind of as we end up closing here, I want to thank everybody for taking time to listen. Again, hopefully, you were able to get something from this as we just couple of old former athletes who just trying to continue to teach what this sport gave to us and how we can help the future of not just our specific sports, but of sports in general. And again, like Coach Teo said, we're raising people. We're not just raising athletes. So if there's anything that inspired you on here, please give us a like and follow and subscribe. That's how we grow this platform, and we continue to get stories and messages out like this because, here at Beyond the Game, More Stories, we believe everybody has a story that somebody needs to hear. If anything you heard that you like, please give us a like, a follow, and subscribe. That's how we continue to grow this and continue to get these messages out. Or if something you heard today, you think somebody that could benefit from hearing it, or just somebody who likes storytelling in sports, we ask you forward this over to them. For more information on Beyond the Game, More Stories, visit our website, www.btgms.com. We also have all our official merchandise on there as well. So as we close, I'm your host, Dwayne Lightfoot. Coach Teo Bailey-Duvall, again, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and share your stories with us. And for everybody, remember, the game may end, but the lessons last a lifetime. So until next time, we'll see you beyond the game.
Thank you.